No one dared to bond without seeing the alien princess's face, except the human. The Grand Hall of the Stellar Diplomatic Corps headquarters buzzed with nervous energy as Commander Derek Steele adjusted his formal dress uniform for what felt like the 1,000th time. The dark, armored fabric hugged his muscular frame, a perfect blend of military precision and diplomatic elegance. His thick, well-groomed beard and mustache framed a face that had charmed its way through countless negotiations. But today was different. Today, he was about to marry someone he'd never truly seen. "You can still back out," Admiral Richardson murmured beside him, his weathered face creased with concern. "No one would blame you. Hell, half the galaxy thinks she's hiding some kind of horrific deformity under that veil." Derek ran a hand through his dark hair, a wry smile playing across his lips. "And let humanity look like cowards? Not a chance in hell, sir." The massive chamber was divided into two distinct sections. On one side stood the human delegation, their formal military uniforms creating a sea of crisp lines and polished metals. On the other, the Etherian representatives waited in their flowing, iridescent robes that seemed to catch and reflect every bit of light in the room. And there at the center of it all stood his bride-to-be, Princess Lytha of the Etherian Empire. Her ceremonial gray veil, resembling an advanced technological version of a niqab, obscured every feature of her face. The material seemed to shift and flow like liquid mercury, making it impossible to discern even the basic shape of what lay beneath. "The things we do for peace," Derek muttered, straightening his spine as the ceremony began. The traditional Earth-Etherian hybrid ceremony proceeded with all the pomp and circumstance one would expect from such a momentous diplomatic occasion. Derek spoke his vows clearly and confidently, his deep voice carrying across the silent chamber. When it came time for the exchange of rings, he noticed his bride's hands were trembling slightly, the first sign of humanity, or rather alienity, he'd seen from her. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. The unveiling of the bride. Derek held his breath along with everyone else as Princess Lytha slowly raised her hands to the veil. The material parted like a curtain of liquid starlight, revealing a face that made Derek's heart skip several beats. Her skin was a pale, luminescent silver that seemed to glow from within. Large violet eyes sparkled with intelligence, and was that amusement? Long white hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall of moonlight. She was breathtakingly beautiful, but in an entirely alien way that made her even more captivating. A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. Derek realized he'd been holding his breath and quickly remembered to exhale. "Well," Princess Lytha's voice carried a musical lilt, her violet eyes twinkling with mischief. "Were you expecting tentacles, Commander?" Derek couldn't help but laugh, the tension in his shoulders melting away. "Actually, I was betting on scales. I owe Admiral Richardson 20 credits." The princess's melodious laughter joined his, breaking the formal atmosphere. "How disappointing for you both. I trust you'll survive the disappointment of marrying a merely beautiful alien princess." "I suppose I'll manage somehow," he replied with a roguish grin, earning more laughter from both delegations. The rest of the ceremony proceeded smoothly, though Derek couldn't help but notice the way Counselor Thane, the Etherian diplomatic chief, seemed to grip his ceremonial staff with white-knuckled intensity. Something about the man's rigid posture set off warning bells in Derek's tactical mind. At the reception that followed, Derek and Lytha found themselves in a relatively quiet corner, surrounded by the gentle hum of diplomatic small talk. "You know," Lytha said softly, sipping from a glass of shimmering blue liquid, "you're the first person outside my family who didn't flinch when I removed the veil." Derek raised an eyebrow. "Really? Why would anyone flinch at such a lovely face? Most species find our natural bioluminescence unsettling. It's why we developed the veils in the first place." She tilted her head, studying him. "But you humans are different, aren't you? Always charging headfirst into the unknown." "It's kind of our thing," Derek admitted, "though I prefer to think of it as embracing new possibilities." A shadow passed over Lytha's face. "Speaking of possibilities," she glanced around before continuing in a lower voice, "there are things you'd need to know, husband. Forces at work that..." The sharp sound of breaking glass cut through their conversation. They turned to see Counselor Thane sprawled on the floor, his ceremonial staff clattering away across the polished surface. As guards rushed to help him up, Derek caught a glimpse of something metallic beneath the man's robes. Definitely not standard diplomatic attire. Well, Derek muttered, this should be interesting. The newlyweds' private quarters aboard the diplomatic vessel Star Sovereign reflected a careful blend of human and Etherian aesthetics. Derek found himself studying the way starlight filtered through the crystalline viewport, casting ethereal patterns across Litha's silvery skin as she stood gazing at the cosmic ballet beyond. Your heart rate increases whenever you look at me, she observed without turning, a hint of amusement in her melodic voice. Is that a human response to aesthetic appreciation, or something more primal? Derek approached slowly, admiring how her white hair seemed to capture and reflect the stellar light. Both, actually. You're fascinating in ways I'm still trying to comprehend. She turned to face him, violet eyes sparkling with curiosity and something else, the desire perhaps. Humans are remarkably direct with their emotions. It's refreshing. Among my people, such obvious displays would be considered uncouth. Yet here you are, reading my vital signs without hesitation, he teased, closing the distance between them. Isn't that a bit direct? Litha's lips curved into a mischievous smile. I'm a princess. We're allowed certain liberties. Her hand reached up to trace the line of his beard, sending an electric thrill through his body. Your facial hair, for instance. Among Etherians, such features are impossible. I find it intriguingly masculine. Derek caught her hand in his, bringing it to his lips. And I find everything about you intriguing. The way your skin seems to glow, brighter when you're excited, how your eyes shift color with your emotions. You notice such things? Litha's bioluminescence intensifies slightly, proving his point. Most species avoid looking at us directly. They find our light unsettling. Humans are drawn to light, Derek murmured, his free hand settling at her waist. We've been reaching for the stars since we first looked up at the night sky. Their first kiss was tentative, exploratory. Derek marveled at how her lips seemed to tingle against his, like touching a gentle electric current. When they parted, Litha's skin was glowing noticeably brighter. That was, she breathed, unexpected. Our research indicated human mating rituals were more complex, requiring extensive courtship periods. Derek couldn't help but laugh. We're already married, remember? Besides, some humans prefer to let things develop naturally. Naturally? Litha's eyes darkened to a deep purple. Like your ancient ancestors? Before all your civilization and protocols? Something like that, Derek agreed, his voice growing husky. Though I hope you don't find that too primitive. Litha's fingers traced patterns on his chest, sending shivers through him. Actually, I find human primitiveness quite appealing. Your species has retained something we Etherians lost long ago. The ability to act on pure instinct, to feel without overthinking. Their second kiss was anything but tentative. Derek found himself lost in sensations he'd never experienced before. The electric tingle of her skin, the way her bioluminescence pulsed in rhythm with their racing hearts, the subtle alien sweetness of her taste. When they finally separated, both breathing heavily, Litha's entire body was glowing like a newborn star. I should warn you, she whispered against his lips. Intimate contact with an Etherian can be intense. Our emotional states affect our bioluminescence, which in turn affects our partner's nervous system. I'm not afraid of a little intensity, Derek replied, pulling her closer. Unless you're trying to warn me off. Her laugh was like crystal chimes in a warm breeze. Quite the opposite, my brave human. I'm simply ensuring you're prepared for what happens when an Etherian loses control of their luminescence during moments of passion. The rest of the night passed in a blur of sensations, emotions, and discoveries. They learned each other's bodies with equal parts curiosity and desire, bridging the gap between their species with every touch, every kiss, every shared breath. Later, as they lay tangled in sheets that seemed to shimmer with residual Etherian light, Litha traced the outline of Derek's jaw. You humans are remarkable, she mused. You approach everything, even interspecies intimacy, with such fearless enthusiasm. Is that a complaint? Derek asked, running his fingers through her starlight hair. An observation, and perhaps a confession. She propped herself up on one elbow, her skin still glowing softly. I've never experienced anything like this. The way you make me feel, it's not just physical. It's as if you've awakened something primal in me, something I didn't even know existed. Derek pulled her close, marveling at how natural it felt to hold her. I think that's called chemistry, or maybe it's just love. Love? Litha tested the word carefully. We have no direct translation for that concept in our language. The closest would be mutual beneficial bonding for genetic diversity. How romantic, Derek chuckled. Indeed, though I'm beginning to understand why humans place such importance on it. She nestled against him, her light dimming to a comfortable glow. Perhaps there are many things my people could learn from humans. Their peaceful moment was interrupted by a subtle vibration through the ship's hull. Derek sat up, military instincts kicking in. Did you feel that? Litha nodded, her expression turning serious. We're changing course, but we shouldn't be. Our trajectory to the Etherian capital was pre-programmed and locked. Another vibration, stronger this time. Derek was already moving, reaching for his uniform. Someone's overriding the navigation systems. Impossible, Litha said, though her rapidly brightening glow betrayed her concern. Only a member of the royal family or the High Council could... She trailed off, her eyes widening. Counselor Thane? Your suspicious friend from the wedding? Derek finished buttoning his jacket. I knew there was something off about him. Litha rose gracefully, her ceremonial robes materializing around her with a thought. If he's involved, this is worse than a simple navigation override. He's one of the strongest opponents of human-Etherian relations. Then I guess our honeymoon's over, Derek said grimly, checking his sidearm. Ready to face your first crisis as a married couple? Litha's answering smile was fierce. I thought you'd never ask. As they prepared to leave their quarters, Litha caught Derek's arm. Wait, there's something you should know. Her violet eyes met his with an intensity that made his breath catch. What we shared tonight, it created more than just a physical bond. Among my people, intimate contact initiates a biochemical synchronization process. Meaning? Derek raised an eyebrow. Meaning we're now connected on a cellular level. I can sense your emotional state, your physical condition. She placed a hand over his heart. And if we're separated, I can find you anywhere in the galaxy. Derek processed this information with typical human adaptability. That could be tactically advantageous. Litha's laugh was tinged with wonder. That's your response? Not concern about privacy or autonomy? Would concern change anything? No. Then let's focus on using it to our advantage. He checked his weapon again. Can you sense Thane through the ship? Litha closed her eyes, her skin pulsing with concentrated light. Bridge level, he's anxious, angry. Her eyes snapped open. And he's not alone. There are others with him. Their biochemical signatures suggest combat readiness. Of course there are, Derek sighed. Any chance we could just stroll up there and ask them nicely to turn the ship around? About the same chances of Araxians showing mercy, Litha replied, then caught his blank look. That means no? Right. Then we do this the human way. Derek moved to the door, then paused. Just out of curiosity, this biochemical bond thing, does it have any other effects I should know about? Litha's skin flickered with what he was learning to recognize as embarrassment. Well, there is one other thing. The synchronization process sometimes results in genetic compatibility. Derek turned slowly. Are you saying what I think you're saying? If you're thinking I might be carrying your child, then yes. She lifted her chin defiantly. Is that a problem? For a moment, Derek just stared at her, then a slow smile spread across his face. You know what? That just makes me even more determined to keep this ship, and everyone on it, safe. He opened the door. Shall we go save our honeymoon? Litha's answering smile was radiant. Lead the way, my brave human husband. The corridors of the Star Sovereign hummed with tension as Derek and Litha made their way toward the diplomatic conference room. Their newfound connection allowed them to move in perfect synchronization, anticipating each other's movements with an ease that would have taken years to develop otherwise. I can sense 12 individuals with Thane, Litha whispered. her skin pulsing with subtle patterns that Derek was beginning to recognize as anxiety. Their biochemical signatures suggest they're all armed. Derek nodded, keeping his voice low. The conference room has multiple entry points and neutral ground protocols. If we can get them talking, we might be able to understand what they really want. You still think diplomacy will work? Litha's violet eyes searched his face. After they've committed what amounts to an act of war? Trust me, Derek smiled, his hand brushing against hers. Sometimes the best way to disarm someone is to give them exactly what they want. A chance to be heard. The touch sent a cascade of sensations through their bond, momentarily distracting them both. Since their intimate encounter, every point of contact seemed to amplify their connection, making it increasingly difficult to focus on anything else. Your confidence is... Litha paused, her skin flickering with what Derek now recognized as desire. Distracting. Says the woman who literally glows when she's aroused, he teased, earning a playful swat to his arm. Focus, Commander, she chided, though her increased luminescence betrayed her amusement. We have a crisis to manage. They reached the conference room's main entrance, where two of Thane's guards stood at attention. Before they could react, Litha stepped forward, every inch the royal princess. Stand aside, she commanded, her voice carrying the weight of generations of authority. Your counselor has some explaining to do. The guards exchanged uncertain glances. Their training demanded they obey royalty, but their current orders. Derek stepped forward, radiating calm confidence. Gentlemen, we're here to talk. Nothing more. Surely allowing a discussion can't hurt your cause? Something in his tone, or perhaps the way he carried himself, seemed to sway them. The doors opened, revealing Counselor Thane and his supporters gathered around the conference table. Ah, the happy couple, Thane's voice dripped with sarcasm. Come to negotiate terms of surrender? Actually, Derek replied smoothly, pulling out a chair for Litha before taking his own seat. We came to hear your concerns. Clearly, they're important enough to risk interstellar war over. This seemed to catch Thane off guard. He had clearly expected resistance, perhaps even violence. The human's diplomatic approach threw him off balance. Our concerns? He sputtered. You dare to make light of the contamination of our royal bloodline? The degradation of our species through this primitive coupling? Litha's skin flashed dangerously, but Derek placed a calming hand on her arm. Through their bond, he could feel her anger subsiding, replaced by understanding. Is that what this is about? She asked, her voice gentler now. You fear that human DNA will weaken our people? Of course. Thane slammed his fist on the table. We've maintained genetic purity for 10,000 years, and now in one night, He trailed off, his eyes widening as he studied Litha more closely. You're already pregnant, Litha finished for him, her hand unconsciously moving to her abdomen. Yes, and before you ask, it happened naturally. No genetic manipulation required. The room erupted in shocked whispers. Even Thane's most loyal supporters seemed stunned by this revelation. Impossible, one of Thane's scientists muttered, pulling out a scanner. Our species are too different. Unless, another chimed in, studying the readings with growing excitement, the humans possess exactly what our species has been searching for: genetic adaptability. Derek watched the dynamics in the room shift as the implication sank in. Through his bond with Litha, he could sense the changing emotional currents among the Etherians. Your people have been struggling with genetic stagnation, he stated, putting the pieces together. That's why the royal family always wore veil, to hide the signs of deterioration. Litha squeezed his hand under the table. For generations, we've been looking for a solution. Our scientists predicted complete genetic collapse within 5 generations. But humans, the excited scientist continued, their DNA has remarkable adaptive capabilities. The ability to bond successfully with Etherian genetics, this could save our species. Thane slumped in his chair, the fight draining from him. We believed keeping our bloodline pure was the only way to preserve our people. But if what you're saying is true, then this marriage isn't a threat to your species, Derek concluded. It's salvation. The tension in the room dissolved into excited scientific discussion. Even Thane's most ardent supporters were now eagerly discussing the possibilities of human-Etherian genetic compatibility. Later, in their private quarters, Litha collapsed onto their bed, exhausted but relieved. "I can't believe it worked. You turned a potential war into a genetic research initiative." Derek joined her, pulling her close. "Humans have a saying, sometimes the best way to defeat your enemy is to make them your ally." Litha hummed, her skin beginning to pulse with that now familiar pattern of desire. "Speaking of human-Etherian compatibility, perhaps we should conduct some more research?" Derek laughed, trailing kisses along her glowing neck. "For science, of course." "Of course," she agreed, her luminescence intensifying. "Though I should warn you, pregnancy makes Etherian women particularly energetic." "Is that a challenge, Princess?" Her answer was lost in a kiss that sent cascades of light dancing across her skin. Several hours later, as they lay contentedly intertwined, Litha traced patterns on Derek's chest. "You know, there's still one thing I don't understand." "Just one?" he teased. She propped herself up on an elbow, her violet eyes serious. "Why did you agree to marry me without seeing my face? Even among our own people, no one would take such a risk." Derek considered the question carefully. "I guess I believe that what was under the veil mattered less than what was in your heart. Humans have a remarkable capacity for looking past the surface to find the beauty beneath. Even if I had been hideous, even then," he pulled her close, feeling their child's presence through their bond. "Though I have to admit, I'm not complaining about how things turned out." Litha's answering laugh filled the room with dancing lights. "Nor am I, my brave, foolish human. Nor am I." The Grand Council chamber of the Etherian capital sparkled like a massive geode, its crystalline walls refracting the bioluminescence of hundreds of assembled dignitaries. Derek stood beside Litha at the central podium, acutely aware that he was the only human in the vast chamber. The past week had been a whirlwind of political maneuvering since their return from the Star Sovereign incident. "Distinguished members of the council," Litha's voice carried effortlessly through the space, her pregnancy causing her natural glow to intensify dramatically. "The evidence is irrefutable. Human genetic compatibility offers our people not just survival, but revival." Through their bond, Derek could feel the mixture of hope and anxiety rippling through his wife. Her hand found his, their fingers intertwining naturally. "Preposterous!" Elder Rathian's voice boomed from the upper tiers. "We cannot base the future of our species on a single successful coupling." "Actually," Derek stepped forward, his deep voice commanding attention, "we can, and we have the data to prove it." He activated the holographic display showing the detailed genetic analysis of their developing child. The chamber filled with gasps as the data scrolled past. Perfect genetic stability, enhanced regenerative capabilities, and most importantly, none of the degradation that had plagued pure Etherian bloodlines for generations. "Fascinating," murmured High Counselor Meridian, her ancient eyes studying the projections. "The human genetic structure actually strengthens our own while maintaining our essential characteristics," Litha added, her free hand resting on her slightly swollen abdomen. "Our child will have both Etherian bioluminescence and human adaptability." The chamber erupted in heated discussion. Derek could feel the political tide shifting through Litha's heightened emotional awareness. Their bond had grown stronger over the past weeks, allowing them to share not just emotions, but subtle impressions of the political currents swirling around them. "And what of tradition?" another elder demanded. Our customs? Our way of life." "What way of life?" Litha challenged, her skin flashing with controlled anger. "The way of hiding behind veils, of watching our children grow weaker with each generation, of arranged marriages between cousins because we fear outside blood?" Derek squeezed her hand, sending calming waves through their connection. She took a deep breath, her glow stabilizing. "Look at me," she continued, softer now. "I stand before you unveiled, bonded to a human who saw past our differences to our shared humanity. And I carry within me the future of both our peoples." The chamber fell silent. Even the most conservative members couldn't deny the evidence of their own eyes. Litha's pregnancy glow was stronger than any seen in generations. Later that evening, in their private chambers in the palace, Derek watched Litha pace restlessly. Her skin rippled with patterns he learned to associate with deep thought. "You're worried about the vote tomorrow," he observed, catching her hand as she passed. She allowed him to pull her onto the plush, lounging couch, curling naturally into his embrace. The council is split. Some see hope in human compatibility, others fear change. Her skin flickered with amusement. Though I noticed several of the younger council members watching you rather intently. Oh, Derek raised an eyebrow, his hands tracing patterns on her glowing skin. Should I be concerned? Quite the opposite, Litha purred, her luminescence shifting to a deeper, more intimate pattern. You've become quite the object of fascination, the strong, handsome human who dared to marry an unseen princess and then proved capable of things our scientists thought impossible. You mean besides driving my alien wife wild with desire? He teased, earning a playful swat. That too, she admitted, straddling his lap with fluid grace. Though I think it's more about your fearlessness, your willingness to embrace the unknown. Her fingers traced his beard, something she never tired of doing. Do you know how many Etherian nobles refused to even consider marriage to me? They couldn't bear the thought of binding themselves to someone they couldn't see. Their loss, Derek murmured, pulling her closer. Though I have to admit, I hit the jackpot in the looks department. Litha's laugh sent cascades of light dancing across her skin. Shallow human. Says the woman who can't keep her hands off my beard. Their playful banter dissolved into more intimate activities, their bond amplifying every sensation until the room filled with pulsing light. Much later, as they lay contentedly tangled together, a thought occurred to Derek. You know, if the council approves human Etherian unions, we're going to need to establish some kind of cultural exchange program. Litha propped herself up on an elbow, her post-intimacy glow casting soft shadows. What did you have in mind? Well, humans will need to understand Etherian customs, and your people will need to learn about human relationships, he grinned. Though maybe we skipped the part about traditional human dating rituals. I don't think your nobles could handle the uncertainty, says the man who married a woman sight unseen. She teased, then grew serious. Though you make a valid point, when our peoples have much to learn from each other. Her hand drifted to her growing belly, starting with how to raise a child who belongs to both worlds. Derek covered her hand with his own, feeling their child's presence through their bond. We'll figure it out together. That's what humans do best. Adapt and overcome. And what Etherians do worst, Litha sighed. Perhaps that's why we need you so much. Your species embraces change, while mine, we've been stagnating in our traditions for millennia. Change isn't easy, Derek acknowledged, pulling her close. But sometimes the hardest choices lead to the best outcomes. Like marrying a veiled princess? Exactly like that. He kissed her softly, feeling her contentment flow through their bond. Though I still think I got the better end of that deal. Litha's answering smile lit up the room. Literally. Flatterer. Guilty as charged. The Royal Medical Chamber buzzed with activity as a team of human and Etherian specialists monitored Litha's unprecedented pregnancy. Derek paced nearby, his protective instincts heightened by the waves of discomfort flowing through their bond. At 6 months along, Litha's natural bioluminescence had intensified to the point where she literally lit up entire rooms. Fascinating, Dr. Elena Rogers murmured, studying the holographic displays. The fetus appears to be developing both human and Etherian characteristics simultaneously, but in perfect harmony. More importantly, Litha interjected, her skin pulsing with mild irritation, is our child healthy? The human doctor smiled reassuringly. Remarkably so. In fact, the combination of human adaptability and Etherian regenerative capabilities seems to have created something entirely new and incredibly robust. Derek moved to his wife's side, taking her hand. Through their connection, he could feel their child's presence, a warm glow of contentment that seemed to bridge their two species perfectly. The public interest in your pregnancy has reached unprecedented levels, High Healer Solarian commented, his ancient eyes twinkling. You've become quite the sensation across both our worlds. Don't remind me, Litha groaned, her free hand resting on her swollen belly. I can barely leave our chambers without being mobbed by curious nobles and scientists. At least they're not hiding behind veils anymore, Derek observed, earning a ripple of amused light from his wife. Indeed, in the months since their marriage, the practice of veiling had all but disappeared among the Etherian nobility. Later that evening, in their private gardens, Derek watched Litha float in their bioluminescent pool. The Etherean water responded to her pregnancy-enhanced glow, creating spectacular patterns of light that danced across the surface. "You're staring again," she called out, her voice playful. "Can you blame me?" He settled at the pool's edge, letting his feet dangle in the warm water. "You're literally glowing with my child." Litha swam closer, her movements graceful despite her growing belly. "Our child," she corrected, reaching for his hand. "Though I must admit, these human pregnancy hormones are intense." "Is that your subtle way of saying you want me to join you in the pool?" Her skin flickered with desire, a sight that never failed to take his breath away. "Nothing subtle about it, Commander." Derek didn't need to be asked twice. The water was perfectly heated, and Litha's enhanced bioluminescence made the entire pool shimmer like liquid starlight. As he drew her into his arms, their bond hummed with shared desire. "The healers say increased intimacy is beneficial during pregnancy," Litha murmured against his neck. "Something about hormonal balance and genetic synchronization." "Is that so?" Derek grinned, his hands exploring the new curves of her changing body. "Well, far be it from me to argue with medical advice." Their laughter echoed through the garden as they lost themselves in each other, their passion creating waves of light that rippled through the water. Much later, as they lay on the heated stones beside the pool, Litha traced patterns on Derek's chest. "I never imagined pregnancy could be like this," she mused. "Among pure Etherians, it's often a difficult, dangerous process. But with you," her skin pulsed with contentment. "Everything feels natural, right?" "Human adaptability at its finest," Derek teased, then grew serious. "Though I worry about the pressure being put on our child. The first human-Etherian hybrid. That's a lot to live up to." "Our little one already has your strength," Litha assured him, guiding his hand to feel a kick. "And my luminescence, apparently. The healers say the glow response is stronger than anything they've seen in generations." Through their bond, Derek could sense their child's vibrant life force, a perfect blend of both their species. "Have you given any thought to names?" Litha's skin flickered with amusement. "Actually, I was thinking we could honor both our traditions, an Etherian name that reflects their luminescent nature, and a human name that speaks to their strength. Any particular combinations in mind?" "Well," she sat up, her wet hair cascading down her back like liquid silver. "In the ancient Etherian tongue, Aurora means light of new dawn. And for a human name, perhaps something strong, traditional?" "Aurora James," Derek tested the combination. "Or Aurora Jane for a girl." The baby kicked again, causing Litha's skin to pulse brightly. "I think someone approves," she laughed. Their peaceful moment was interrupted by a subtle vibration from Derek's communicator, a message from Earth's diplomatic corps. The human media was demanding an interview with the expectant parents. "They want to do a live broadcast," Derek sighed. "Apparently, the public is fascinated by our unprecedented love story." Litha's skin flickered with mischief. "Well, we are rather unprecedented. The human commander who dared to marry a veiled princess, only to discover she was carrying his child mere weeks later." "When you put it that way, it does sound rather dramatic," Derek admitted, pulling her close. "Though they don't know the half of it. Like how their brave commander can't keep his hands off his alien wife? Or how said alien wife's pregnancy hormones make her practically insatiable." Their playful banter was interrupted by another kick from their active child. Through their bond, they could feel waves of contentment and amusement. "Did our baby just," Derek started, "respond to our flirting?" "Yes," Litha confirmed, her skin pulsing with joy. "It seems our little one has inherited both your sense of humor and my empathic abilities." Derek shook his head in wonder. A laughing, glowing, empathic baby. The media is going to have a field day with this. "Let them," Litha said firmly. "Our child will be a bridge between our peoples, living proof that love knows no boundaries, not even species." As if in agreement, their baby kicked again, sending waves of light cascading across Litha's skin. Derek pulled his wife closer, marveling at how a diplomatic marriage to an unseen princess had transformed into something so profound. "You know," he murmured against her hair, "I think we're going to need a bigger pool once this little one starts swimming." Litha's answering laugh lit up the entire garden. The royal medical wing of the Etherian palace pulsed with an unprecedented intensity of bioluminescence. Litha's pregnancy had reached its culmination, and her natural glow had become so brilliant that special light-dampening fields had to be installed to protect the medical equipment. Derek hadn't left her side for the past 48 hours, their bond transmitting every sensation, every emotion between them with crystalline clarity. The birth of the first human Etherian child had drawn medical experts from both species, but they maintained a respectful distance, monitoring through sophisticated sensors rather than crowding the couple. The contractions are intensifying, High Healer Solarian observed, studying the holographic readings. The child's own bioluminescence is responding to the mother's. Derek brushed Litha's damp hair from her forehead, marveling at how her skin seemed to pulse with waves of starlight. Through their connection, he could feel their son's eagerness to enter the world, a sensation that still amazed him. "He's strong," Litha gasped between contractions, her violet eyes meeting his. "Like his father." "And as bright as his mother," Derek replied, earning a strained laugh that sent cascades of light dancing across the walls. Dr. Rogers approached with another set of readings. "The hybrid physiology is fascinating. The child is utilizing both human and Etherian birth processes simultaneously, adapting moment by moment." "Less scientific observation," Litha growled, her grip on Derek's hand tightening, "more helping this adaptation along." The next few hours passed in a blur of intensity, and Derek remained steadfast in his unwavering presence, anchoring Litha through waves of sensation that would have overwhelmed most beings. Their bond transmitted everything between them: pain, determination, excitement, and an overwhelming love that seemed to grow stronger with each passing moment. Finally, with a burst of light that temporarily overloaded even the dampening fields, their son entered the world. His first cry was accompanied by a pulse of bioluminescence that matched his mother's perfectly, but with an intensity that made even the Etherian healers step back in surprise. "By the star," Solarian breathed, "I haven't seen such strong luminescence in a newborn since the ancient recordings of our first ones." Derek barely heard him. He was transfixed by the sight of his son, a perfect blend of both species. The baby's skin held a subtle silver sheen like his mother's, but with a warmth that spoke of his human heritage. Tufts of dark hair, already showing signs of Derek's waves, contrasted beautifully with the subtle glow emanating from his skin. When he opened his eyes, they revealed irises of the deepest violet, flecked with gold. "He's perfect," Litha whispered, her own glow dimming to a soft, content pulse as she cradled their child. Through their bond, Derek could feel her overwhelming joy mixing with his own. "Have you chosen a name?" Dr. Rogers asked softly, her professional demeanor barely masking her own emotion at witnessing this historic moment. Litha looked up at Derek, her eyes sparkling. "Luminaris," she said firmly. "In the ancient Etherian tongue, it means bearer of the eternal light." "Luminaris, James Steele," Derek added, his voice thick with emotion. "A name for both worlds." The baby responded to his name with another pulse of light, accompanied by what could only be described as a happy gurgle. Through their bond, both parents felt a wave of pure contentment from their son. "He's already showing signs of empathic ability," Solarian noted with amazement, "and such control over his bioluminescence. Unprecedented." The next few hours were a whirlwind of medical checks and official recordings, but Derek and Litha remained in their own world, marveling at their miracle. When they were finally left alone in their private medical suite, Litha shifted in her bed, making room for Derek to join her. "I can't believe how much I love him already," she murmured, watching their son sleep peacefully between them. "And how much stronger our bond feels now that he's here." Derek traced a gentle finger along Luminaris's cheek, watching in fascination as the baby's skin brightened slightly at his touch. "He's going to change everything, isn't he?" "He already has," Litha smiled, her own skin pulsing in sync with their son's. "Look at what our love created. A perfect bridge between our species. All because you were brave enough to marry a woman, sight unseen." "Best decision I ever made," Derek murmured, leaning in to kiss her softly. The contact sent pleasant shivers through their bond, causing Luminaris to stir and emit a small pulse of light. Already responding to his parents' affection, Litha laughed softly. "He's going to be quite the handful when he gets older. With your royal bearing and my stubborn streak, definitely." Derek grinned, then grew thoughtful. "You know, he's probably going to have admirers from both species falling all over themselves when he comes of age. Let's get through his first day before we start worrying about future romantic entanglements," Litha suggested, though her amusement flowed clearly through their bond. Though I must admit, the thought of our grandchildren having both human and Etherean traits is rather appealing. One milestone at a time, love." Derek watched as Luminaris stretched in his sleep, his tiny fingers curling around his father's much larger one. "Though I have to admit, I wouldn't mind giving him a sibling or two someday." Litha's skin flickered with interest. "Really? Even after witnessing childbirth?" "Especially after witnessing childbirth," Derek replied seriously. "Watching you bring our son into the world. It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Though maybe we wait a bit before trying for another one." "Agreed," Litha yawned, her glow dimming as exhaustion finally caught up with her. "Though I wouldn't object to practicing the conception part once I've recovered." Derek chuckled softly, pulling her closer, while being careful not to disturb their sleeping son. "Rest now, my beautiful, unveiled princess. We have a lifetime ahead of us to practice whatever you'd like." As his family drifted off to sleep, Derek reflected on how a diplomatic marriage had transformed into something so profound. Their son's steady, peaceful glow illuminated the room with promise. The promise of a future where love knew no boundaries, where courage to embrace the unknown led to miraculous possibilities. And it all started because he dared to say, "I do," to a woman whose face he'd never seen. 6 months after Luminaris' birth, the royal gardens had become a sanctuary for the young family. The bioluminescent pools, once used solely for Litha's relaxation, now featured a specially designed shallow area where their son could safely splash and experiment with his growing abilities. Derek sat at the pool's edge, watching in amazement as Luminaris created intricate patterns of light in the water, his tiny hands moving with surprising coordination. At 6 months, their son already displayed remarkable control over his hybrid abilities, combining human adaptability with Etherean luminescence in ways that continually surprised both species scientists. "He's showing off for you again," Litha observed, emerging from their chambers in a shimmeringly diaphanous robe that made Derek's breath catch. Even after all this time, her beauty still struck him with the same force as when she first removed her veil. "Can you blame him?" Derek grinned as their son sent a small wave of glowing water toward his mother. "He clearly inherited your flair for dramatic entrances." Litha gracefully settled beside them, her skin automatically synchronizing with their son's gentle glow. "And your penchant for mischief, apparently." Through their bond, which had only grown stronger since Luminaris' birth, Derek could feel both his wife's contentment and their son's bubbling joy. The connection between the three of them had developed into something unprecedented, a family bond that transcended species. "The diplomatic corps called again," Derek mentioned, watching Luminaris create what appeared to be a miniature galaxy in the pool. "They want us to host another reception for potential human-Etherean couples." Litha hummed, leaning against him. "Did you tell them I'm not exactly in reception hosting condition at the moment?" Derek's hand drifted to her abdomen, where the earliest signs of another pregnancy were just becoming visible. Their second child, conceived just 2 months ago during a particularly passionate celebration of Luminaris' first successful night's sleep, was already showing signs of being just as remarkable as their first. "I tried, but apparently you're living proof of the benefits of human-Etherean unions." Their words, not mine. Litha's skin flickered with amusement. "Well, they're not wrong, though I doubt they're interested in the more intimate benefits." Their playful banter was interrupted by a splash and a delighted squeal as Luminaris discovered he could make the water swirl in spirals. His happiness pulsed through their family bond, causing both parents to laugh. "You know," Derek mused, watching their son play, "I never thought I'd be grateful for all those ridiculous rumors about your appearance." Litha raised an elegant eyebrow. "Oh, if people hadn't been so afraid to marry you sight unseen, someone else might have snatched you up before I had the chance." "Smooth talker," Litha purred, her skin brightening with desire. "Though I must admit, I'm rather glad no one else was brave enough to take that risk." She shifted closer, her robe sliding off one shoulder. It took a special kind of human to see past the veil. Derek pulled her into his lap, mindful of her early pregnancy. "Special kind of human? Or just so spectacularly lucky?" "Both," she decided, kissing him softly. The contact sent pleasant shivers through their bond, causing Luminaris to look up from his water play with curious interest. "My bright, da happy," he declared in his mixture of human and Etherian words, his skin pulsing in rhythm with theirs. "That's right, little star." Litha smiled, extending her arms to their son. "Come here and show us what else you've learned today." Luminaris paddled eagerly to them, his wet skin creating trails of light as he moved. Once settled in his mother's arms, he placed a tiny hand on her stomach. "Sister Bright, too." Derek and Litha exchanged startled looks. Through their bond, they could feel their son's absolute certainty. "Sister?" Derek asked carefully. "You can sense that already?" Luminaris nodded enthusiastically, his dark hair spraying droplets of glowing water. "Sister Bright like stars." Litha's hand joined her son's on her abdomen, her eyes widening. "He's right. The luminescence pattern, it's different from what Luminaris's was at this stage. More crystalline." "A daughter," Derek breathed, covering both their hands with his own. Through their enhanced family bond, he could now sense what they were feeling. A distinct, delicate presence, already beginning to shine. "The first female human-Etherian hybrid," Litha mused, her skin glowing with maternal pride. "She'll have quite the legacy to live up to. With you as her mother?" "No doubt." Derek gathered his family closer, marveling at how complete he felt. "Though maybe we wait to tell the diplomatic corps. I'm not sure they could handle the excitement." Litha laughed, the sound causing ripples of light across the pool's surface. "Agreed, though we should probably warn them that future human-Etherian couples might need larger quarters." "Oh?" Derek raised an eyebrow, recognizing the mischievous tone in her voice. "Well, if they're anything like us, they'll discover that the combination of human stamina and Etherian fertility can lead to some rather productive results." Their son giggled, clearly picking up on their playful mood through the bond, though thankfully too young to understand the implications. As the stars began to emerge above their private garden, Derek reflected on the journey that had brought them here. A diplomatic marriage that could have been a disaster had instead become a beacon of hope for both species. Their love had created not just one miracle, but two, proving that the bravest choices often led to the most beautiful outcomes. "What are you thinking about?" Litha asked softly, sensing his contemplative mood. "About how grateful I am that I took a chance on a veiled princess," he replied, kissing her temple, "and how every day since has been better than the last." Luminaris, drowsy from his water play, cuddled between them, his gentle glow merging with his mother's. Through their bond, they could feel their daughter's presence growing stronger, her developing luminescence adding another layer to their family's light. "We're going to need a bigger pool," Derek observed, earning another laugh from his wife. "And probably a bigger garden," Litha agreed, her free hand finding his. "Though something tells me we'll manage." As night fell fully, the family's combined bioluminescence created a private universe of light and love, a testament to the power of looking past surfaces to find the beauty within and the courage to embrace the unknown.